Thank you very much, Sandra. I'm absolutely delighted to be here and to be here again for the third time. And I'm to be able to talk to you about where we are in finance and how finance is going to help us with a positive economy and whether or not it can actually service a more positive world. Perhaps I have to give you put things into context, and let's look a little bit further into the future. What sort of finance do we need in order so that we can have a positive economy? And thinking about 2020 and 2030. The positive financing, or me as a positive financer, what I hope to be, this is an interesting topic because last week I was actually part of a big conference in London, which was the principles for foreign investments. So there were 1,400 major investments from major pension funds and huge investors around the world. And our whole commitment was to be more responsible in the way they invested their assets. So there we were in the heart of London, and as it happened, right next to the conference centre was a fair, an arms fair. So there were tanks and people selling weapons and arms and instruments to kill people with. And in the evening, there were buses which took us to the centre of London to go to our gala dinner. We got on the bus, and we get out of the conference centre. We get on, and right in front of the conference centre were demonstrators with placards saying "No to war." They were pacifists, and they thought that we were the arms sellers actually, because we were stepping out of the same conference centre. And they thought that we were the ones. And we said, look, we're nonetheless we're responsible financiers. We're here to change the world, and perhaps we're closer to arms sellers than rather than those people who are actually, trying to change the world. So it gave us food for thought. So getting back to finance, what is the point of finance internationally? I think there are four main uses for the financial system. What does it do? It's the problem with the financial system is that we realize that it's indispensable, particularly when everything going badly. I mean, look at the Greek problem a few weeks ago. When everything stops, everything stops. When the bank stops, there's no social life. There's absolutely nothing. So finance is helps with liquidity. It helps allocate capital. It means you can transport money from the present to the future, and it's also useful for putting in place necessary infrastructure so that everybody can exchange goods and services. Now, if we think about a positive economy, these four objectives, does current finance match these objectives? Liquidity, well, yeah, but not necessarily. Sometimes there is too much liquidity. For example, we get explosive bubbles, and we have a liquidity crisis. So we don't necessarily match that first need. Now then, what about allocating capital? There is a serious problem here allocating capital. We've got a need for energy transition to sort of move capital into renewable energy, and the current financial system does not enable this. We don't have this evolution and this progress that we want to be seeing in this area. The third thing is transporting money from the present to the future. We have markets that are so short-termist. Sometimes it only takes a microsecond to make money on the stock market. So we've got such a short-term thinking that we don't fulfill this role of allocating money from the present to the future. And we can see that the market is in fact in a state of total instability. So the current financial system does not match up with these four main objectives. So what should we do? What should we be doing about this? So after the 2011 crisis, there was a think tank for sustainable business. had three main points, three possible ways of looking at future financing. The first one is risky business as usual. That is, let's carry on as we're doing with current risk methods. Back to borrowing. That was another thing. And then the third one was inclusive innovation. That means let's use the intelligent brains of financiers, but let's do that for the general interest of people. So let's forget the first one, risky business as usual. That was unacceptable. The second one, back to borrowing. Why not? Why not? Why not? It's pretty boring stuff, but on the other hand, financiers can't do that. They don't want to be bored. So if we want to do this, you'll have to have strong regulation, which means that they have to come back to this rather boring method of financing. So all the attempts at regulation since 2008 haven't managed to do this. They've managed to reduce a little bit of risk, but they haven't really succeeded. But haven't been that effective. And I doubt that we'd be able to do this because we would have to have extremely strong systems of regulation, which would almost be recessive. So the third solution, of course, this is what we all dream about, is a lot about responsible financiers and inclusive innovation. So responsible financing, impact investing, inclusive financing, microfinancing, everything that means we can use the financial system in order to resolve economic and social problems. Now, is that going to work? It works, and it's advancing, but it's not amazing. Why is this? Because in a lot of cases, the commitments that have been made mean come back to business as usual. Let me give you an example of this, because this is climate year, isn't it? What's happening in terms of climate? Financiers have made a lot of commitments in announcing that they're going to do a lot of things for climate, and they're going to integrate the carbon risk in the way that they manage their portfolios. The Montreal Pledge made on behalf of 70 major investors, and they said that they will measure the carbon impact of all their portfolio and they will progressively reduce it. Yes, but it's very technical, and often it means there's no major change. So the MSCI, which is one of the major indices in the world, has an index, a list of companies called the Index Low Carbon Index. And the major player in this is Exxon. So you can say things on one side and then continue business as usual on the other. So risky business as usual, no. Back to borrowing, not really. Inclusive innovation, maybe. So where's this going to lead us? This 2030 ideal financing. Do we want a disruptive model? With Kiss Bank, we've seen this. We've seen what can happen. A disruptive model can be disruptive for public opinion, for social movements. Let's see what's happening in the United States, for example, in the American universities with a movement like 350.org, where students push their universities, and there are foundations which have stepped out of investing fossil fuel companies, and we've got a model here. Let's say the Uberization of finance, and in 2030, the finance will not resemble at all what's happening today. We've got an explosion in the number of these models. And during the week of the end of the 20th of August, 27 companies of fintech, digital startups in finance, actually managed to raise $1.6 billion in their own money in 1 week. Amazing record. So Sophie, social finance based in San Francisco, Avant in Chicago, which is digital bank and one in Shanghai. So this is the new world of finance, which is actually exploding the current system, and the current banking system. Do these models, will this enable to construct the world we want? Perhaps, but we don't know. Because on the one hand, we have Kiss Kiss Bank Bank, where they've got a social and environmental objective, and then we have the other ones which don't have the same objective, which is just to, possibly to develop and possibly to make money. So these types of models don't necessarily match up with long-term responsible and ethical financing. So it's not like taxis or hotels like Airbnb and Uber. The social implications, like Greece, for example, are enormous. We can go from a regulated world to one that's deregulated. And so we need a new model, a new way of being, a new legal system, a new legal framework. So my last point is that we need new regulations. Today, regulations, as I said earlier, serve to reduce risk a little. What we need is regulations which completely change the way we look at everything, which integrates environmental and social challenges. It's not me who says this. It's the governor of the Central Bank of England, which is Mark Carney. And if you watch his interviews, he talks about inclusive capitalism, and he says everything's got to change. It's got to change at the level of the IMF. IMF has models, and the World Bank. They have models which are saying that, let's say that the fuel demand was simply going to be increasing all the time. So their models are based on that. You have the FSB, which is the regulatory body for banks, and they're saying, think in the months to come, think about carbon emissions and banks regulations. So things have got to move in that world. We've also got the World Trade Organization, and all these regulatory bodies are trying to take into account take these things into account. For example, like manufacturers in emerging countries. So we need a revolution in terms of regulations. So if we want finance to be changed from the inside, if we want the disruptive models to be a model to encourage innovation and acceleration, we also must make sure that the regulatory framework generally internationally changes, and that is absolutely vital. So is there any chance that this is going to happen? I do not know. What is sure is that I will come and talk to you next year, because at least here I know that when I step out of the room, I won't have the same problems as in London with the demonstrators, because the demonstrators are here with me in the room. Thank you very much.